All right, everybody, welcome to episode 9, Ten-Four Tavern. It is Tuesday, August 26th, 7:05 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Pete, what's going on, brother?
Not much, man. Happy to be here. Good to meet Joe, Chief. Got quite a career. Very impressive.
Yeah, well, let me introduce Joe, if I may. Joe and I know each other about 26, maybe 27 years. I might have met you in 97, 98, but definitely got to really know Joe in 99 when I got to the 7-9 squad, and Joe was over in the 7-5 squad. Brooklyn North SATCOM, we could talk a little bit about that. Joe has had one of the most amazing careers. I don't want to call it charmed because he's worked for every inch of it. But he's in the right place at the right time, doing great police work, starting when he was a rookie cop, doing some really good stuff in Brooklyn in the 7-1. We'll go through some of those stories, making his way into the detective bureau, making sergeant, going back to the bureau, making lieutenant, go back to the bureau, and then some really good stuff, and then 9/11 hits, and then probably a career trajectory, Joe, that you probably didn't anticipate.
Yep.
If I could say that. So with that, welcome Joe Herbert, retired Deputy Chief, New York City Police Department. 36 years, Joe? 37 years?
Yes.
All right, welcome to Ten-Four Tavern, Joe.
Well, thank you both, Pete and Tom, for inviting me on. I've watched a few of your episodes, and I enjoyed them, and I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about my career in Brooklyn and then with the JTTF.
Yep, we got Rob Lukash right here. Great man tonight. Good to see you, Joe. So Rob Lukash, Deputy Chief.
Hey, Rob, thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, good. So let's do this. Let's find out what's drinking, what's on the menu. So Pete, you got illegal mezcal. What's that all about?
It's my wife bought it for me, and it's illegal is the name. Just in case anybody from ATF is listening, it is legal in the United States. It's just the name is illegal. So please leave my front door alone. Thank you.
I got a Devil's Backbone 16-point IPA. It's a double, so I'm drinking 2 beers tonight, but it's the equivalent of 4. So we'll deal with that on back end, and hopefully we're in good shape. And then Joe's high quality H2O, like a lot of our guests. They've gone to the water, iced tea, and hot tea route. So Joe, welcome to the tavern again.
Thank you. I haven't had a drink in 14 years, so I'm drinking water.
Good. So let's see what's going on. So Joe, tremendous career. Why don't you tell us where you grew up and what made you become a cop?
Yeah, I grew up in the Bay Ridge section of Brooklyn. My parents owned a house on 85th Street between 3rd and 4th Avenue. And I was the middle kid of 8 children. I was the 5th child. And my older brother, John, was a Brooklyn North homicide detective before I came on the job. And on my block on 85th Street, Joey Regina, another detective from Brooklyn South homicide, and another good friend of my brother, Johnny, was Joe Mayrose. He lived a couple blocks away. They would come by the house and sit on the front step or the back porch or whatever, and they would talk business. They would talk about their recent collars and their recent investigations. And I always looked forward to it, and I sat like in the background, just listening to the stories that these guys are telling. And I was amazed, by how they put cases together, and how it all came together, and how it worked. So I always wanted to be a detective. I didn't realize you had to be a cop first. I wanted to be a detective, and fortunately, I came on a job in January 1981, and I was assigned to NSU 12 in the Crown Heights section of Brooklyn initially, and then once my NSU time was over, I was assigned to the 7-1 precinct, which is the same location where I was working in NSU 12. And it was a great command. Great cops, busy. In those days, we were averaging like 60 to 70 homicides a year, which were a lot. And you learn the job quickly when you work in an environment like that. So I don't know if you wanted me to get into how I worked up in the 7-1 and anti-crime.
Yeah, sure. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It's your show, Joe. Take us through it. And then when we start hitting some of the more sensational cases, we'll bring them up.
Okay, great. So what happens was I fell in love with the job immediately. I mean, I just loved the job, and the camaraderie and the partnerships with everybody. So I'm in 7-1. I was very active. I made a lot of collars, a lot of robbery collars, gun collars, everything like that. And I worked my way into anti-crime in 1983, which is, a relatively short time. And there in the 7-1 anti-crime, I worked with my partner of 5 years, Dennis Schwab, and my other partner, John McCauley, probably of 4 years. And we were a great team. I mean, we had each other's back. We communicated with each other. We told each other what we were thinking, what we saw, and what could be, and all that. So in December of 1983, we were always the first ones out in the precinct. We couldn't wait to hit the street, and we were the last ones in if we didn't have a collar. So one night in December 7th, actually, we were heading back. It was 1 o'clock in the morning. The tour ended at 1:05 a.m. And we're heading back, and we're taking a slow ride down Flatbush Avenue towards the station house. And there was only Dennis and I that night. And we hear pow, 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 pow. We hear 4 or 5 shots. So we don't see nothing, but we know what we just heard. We continue heading south, and then all of a sudden, we see a guy running around the corner from Woodger Street, makes a left turn, running towards us. And he had, at the time, we both believed was a large pistol in his hand. And so I was driving. Dennis jumped out of the passenger seat, identified himself. The guy kept on running. I make a K-turn. I catch up to Dennis and the guy that we're chasing, thinking that he had a gun, and he just fired shots. And we get to the corner of Caton Avenue and Flatbush Avenue. And Dennis turns the corner, and he jumps on his back. And then as I'm running up behind them, I realize something's wrong, because Dennis is kind of like, not moving. He's down on the ground, and I see a puddle of blood by his face. So the perp is starting to get up again, and I jump on his back, and I'm wrestling with him. And he has a large 8-inch blade kitchen knife in his hand, and he's trying to stab me now. He was holding the knife so hard I could see the whites of his knuckles. He was like really close encounter. And I fired 1 shot, and I hit him in the chest, and he died instantly right in front of us. So Dennis, I immediately went to tend to Dennis, put it over the air, and he was stabbed in the face. What we thought was a gun was actually the knife, and he was stabbed by his nose, where the nose meets the cheek, and he bled a lot. He very significant. With that, the radio cars start rolling up. They throw Dennis in the back of the car. They rush from Kings County Hospital. And then the sergeant comes, and crime scene comes, and, we have like a 2-block long crime scene. Fortunately, Dennis recovered. He actually went home the next morning. He was stabbed in the face. He did suffer a little nerve damage, later on after the incident, but he came back to work at a few weeks out. And, we continued our endeavors in anti-crime. So in 1 year, between let's say June of 83 and June of 84, we effected 129 gun collars between the 3 of us, our team. And I'd like to talk about 2 of those gun collars, because they led to the apprehension and solving of 2 major cases, actually career cases, if you talk about it. The first one being an off-duty police officer was shot and killed on January, I think it was January 30th of 1984. His name was Angelo Brown. He was a 8-4 police cop. He just graduated the academy, and what happens is he's in the 7-7 precinct, which was adjacent to us in the 7-1, bordered by Eastern Parkway. And 3 blocks into the 7-7 from Eastern Parkway, he enters a social club. And it was in the evening, and they had a pool table. So Angelo, minding his own business, he's there to play pool, leans over the table at one point and to take a shot. And there's two rugrats in the room, and they're watching him, and they see his shoulder holster, and they see the gun, his gun. So they devise a plan where they're going to rob him, and they wait for him to leave the location. It was a bitter cold, icy, snowy night out, and he leaves the place, and they accost him, and they rob him, and they rob him of his gun. So they get into a car. He attempts to recover the gun, and he jumps on the hood of the car in an effort to stop them. And one of the shooters, one of the guys gets out and he shoots him twice in the neck, and he killed him. So for a month, it was a total mystery. They had no clues. They had no idea who did. Usually you get some information, you get anonymous tips, you have some direction. For some reason, in this case, they didn't get that kind of information. So we, in the 7-1, guys in anti-crime, both tours were aware of that, and we paid a lot of attention to the what would be, I guess, the northeast section of our command, hoping that maybe we can make a gun collar, maybe somebody knows somebody. So anyway, we're on Eastern Parkway and Schenectady Avenue one night, and we see this guy. His name is Jeffrey Reeves, walking by. He's got the biggest nameplate. He told us it was the biggest nameplate in Crown Heights, and he's wearing a 3/4 length jacket, and he's looking at us. And I make a U-turn. We just wanted to check him out, and he starts running. So Dennis again in the passenger seat. He jumps out. He's chasing him for about 3 blocks. Finally, we grab him running into a building. He discards the gun just before he enters the building. We grab him in the lobby of the building. We go back outside. We cover a gun. It was a 2-inch 38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver. So now we're driving into the 7-1 with the gun collar with Jeffrey Reeves in the back seat. And Dennis says to me, "Hey, Joey, this gun's a Smith & Wesson off-duty cop's gun, So I say, maybe it's Officer Brown's gun. So the guy, the perp, Jeffrey Reeves, says, "That cop didn't get killed with his with the small gun. He got killed with the big gun, the gun that he wears in his uniform holster." So we didn't know that. That wasn't publicized. So as soon as we get back to 7-1, we call the 7-7 squad and we tell them we have a guy here saying that he knows about the case and that the cop got killed with his 4-inch service revolver. So within 20 minutes, I had 20 detectives in the 7-7 squad and Brooklyn North Homicide in our office. He was accurate. He was right. The cop did get killed with his service revolver, which he was carrying off duty. So Jeffrey, we hand him over to the detectives, and they debrief him extensively. And what he tells them basically is that he was selling pot at a smoke shop a couple blocks away from where the cop got killed. And that night, these 2 guys who he knew from previous drug sales came in and they offered to sell him the cop's gun. He says, "I felt the gun." He said, "I could smell the gunpowder and it was still warm." So I said, "I'm not really interested in buying the gun, and they leave. So he knew them by name, and he was able to fully identify them with the assistance of the detectives. And within 24 hours, they had both perps who ended up coming from the 7.5 and the gun recovered. So, that was a major case, off-duty cop killed. And so fortunately for us, the squad commander at the time was Lieutenant Tim Burns.
Yep.
And Lieutenant Burns called us into the office a week or so after the arrest. And he said, "Listen, you guys are, tremendously helpful with the investigation. You cracked the case. I want to do something for you." It's like he was thinking like department recognition. So, I kind of spoke up a little bit. I said, "Boss, we have plenty of department recognition. We'd love to be detectives, So he says, "Hey, listen, guys," he says, "I'm a lieutenant, I'm not a chief." He says, "But I'll tell you what I'll do." He says, I'll write a 49 and I'll document your assistance in this case and your career. We had a lot of department recognition. Both of us were very active. We had a lot of arrests. And he did it. He wrote a 49 recommending that we be assigned to the Detective Bureau. So in those days, I just have to say this, in those days, not like today, there were great cops, white shield cops working in the squads, working in narcotics units, working everywhere. And they would serve sometimes 5, 6, 7 years as a white shield before they got promoted to detective.
Yep.
Because there was no 18-month bill and all that stuff. So while we were waiting to see what happened with the 49, it was submitted, and after a while we didn't really hear nothing about it. So we continued, working our cases, working the street. And in February that, no, in April of that year, we started noticing crack vials. Usually whenever you encounter narcotics, cocaine, and the rest in the streets in New York City at that time, it was aluminum foil, sniff. It was like, it was all powder cocaine. So now we start noticing crack vials appearing and all that stuff. And one day we're driving down Crown Street between Nostrand and Rogers Avenue, and we see like a line, and it's like 70, 80 people waiting online outside a 5-story brick building, 250 Crown Street. So, what's this about? So we start investigating. They're buying crack. They're all lining up for crack. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So finally, we started addressing it because, as you guys know, when you have a situation like that where you have a magnet for people who are addicted to drugs and buying drugs and so forth, the rest of the community suffers because they start breaking into cars, they start doing burglaries, they start doing street robberies, and crime really kicks up in that area.
Yeah.
So the precinct commander, who was Inspector Cole at the time, he writes a 49 directing his cops to give 250 Crown Street special attention. And we were already given special attention, but now we're being directed to. So one night we drive down Crown Street from Nostrand, and just in front of us is a big Lincoln Town Car. I remember it being gray, and we pull in kind of slow behind them. With that, the driver gets out, and big guy. I mean, big, like professional football size guy. And we approach him, and as he sees us coming towards him, he reaches into his waistband and he throws a .25 caliber pistol into the car. So we grab him. He had a passenger in the car. We grabbed that individual, and we arrest him for a gun collar. His name was Gregory Pout, and we didn't know it at the time, but he was the Flatbush Rapist. At the time, it was in the media. There was an individual going around raping women coming home from work, coming home from restaurants, and all that stuff at night, and brutally raping them, dragging them into back alleys. And he was rough with them. Besides the actual rape, he was punching them and strangling them and bad. So the Brooklyn Sex Crime Squad had opened up a pattern on it. It did hit the media, and they did excellent work. And part of the work that they did was, during the course of one of the rapes, a uniformed police officer interviews the woman before they took her to the hospital. And she tells him that he unscrewed the light bulb in the alleyway because he didn't want to make noise. He didn't want to pop the bulb and make noise. So that officer, I believe his name was Boyle from 6-7, he tells crime scene detectives when they respond that the guy unscrewed the light bulb. So the crime scene detectives, using particular care, were able to recover the light bulb. They send that to the lab, and they get a fingerprint off the light bulb. So now, a couple of weeks later, we make the gun arrest, and they're able to marry up the fingerprints that we take of Gregory Pout for the gun arrest to the fingerprint recovered from the light bulb. So all the stories that I was listening to my brother and his partners talk about on my stoop, now I'm experiencing real life. They're putting cases together, and you have 4 people or 4 units in the agency that don't know each other, never communicated. You have the street cop who makes sure that the light bulb gets recovered. You have the crime scene detectives who recover the bulb. You have the lab who lists the fingerprint. Then you have the special victims detectives who put together a program, because computers weren't around then, where they started comparing fingerprints with new arrests. And bingo, you have a brutal rapist off the streets of New York City. And I have to be honest with you, we were so proud of ourselves for being in part of it. This guy was bad news.
So Joe, let me interrupt there.
Yeah.
Now, good time. So here you are, you're inspired by your brother, you come on the job, and true to form, like you're hearing these stories, and now they're coming to life for you, and
Exactly.
You're hitting these major capers, a cop killed, a serial rapist who's terrorizing the Flatbush section of Brooklyn. your partner gets stabbed in the face, you shoot and kill somebody, and there's a mention about your Catholic Christian upbringing and how you dealt with that. I think in the 80s, I mean, I don't even think we do a great job now with that kind of trauma. Certainly didn't do it in the 1980s, you know. But so with that, let's pause here. Let me play your retirement video. Channel 7 ABC News did for you. And then we'll talk through your promotions and your ranks, and we'll get into that. What do you say?
Great.
Deputy Chief Joe Herbert has 36 years on the job and has cracked some of the city's biggest cases, including New York's copycat Zodiac killer. And there he is. Today, dozens of officers showing their gratitude during the department's traditional send-off known as a walkout. 7 on your side, investigative reporter Danielle Lee got an exclusive interview with Deputy Chief Herbert to find out what it takes to solve big crimes.
It's a rewarding job, but it's a dangerous job.
Chief Joe Herbert's success came early.
I've had a great career.
Just 3 years on the job, 1984.
That was my first big one.
Fingerprint evidence would help him catch the city's Flatbush Rapist, wanted for brutally assaulting 7 women.
The trick is know the evidence and master the evidence.
Among fellow detectives, Chief Herbert reached superstar status in the 90s when he caught a notorious serial killer.
It came to me. I didn't come to it.
Herbert had studied letters written by the New York City Zodiac killer for years without a break. Then, while working as a hostage negotiator, he arrested Heriberto Seda, who wrote a confession. Herbert recognized the writing.
At the bottom of the letters, he makes a symbol. It felt, actually, it was a calm feeling because I knew I had him.
After 9/11, the NYPD called on Herbert to help fight terrorist threats to the city.
I was one of the first 25 to go in as a lieutenant.
He retires as the commanding officer at the Joint Terrorism Task Force.
The threat is constant.
Among those threats, last year's Chelsea bombing.
There was a lot of force, there was a lot of power in that force, in that bomb, and we're very fortunate nobody got killed.
But for all his notoriety, Herbert says he's most proud of making New York City a safer place to live.
Chasing bad guys down alleyways, hopping fences, being shot at.
And if Herbert had his way, he would keep going, even today, at 60.
I don't want to leave, but it's time.
Remarkable that a man who almost never became a cop
I wasn't going to take the job. I had a job that was making a lot more money.
retires as an NYPD great.
It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me.
And I think I speak for a lot of people when I say I'm glad he did join the force. And what may be the best compliment an officer could receive, Chief Herbert's colleagues told me that if something happened to one of their family members, they would want Herbert leading that investigation.
One of the top
Muted, Tommy. You're muted.
Sorry, we were getting echoes on the thing. So great send off. WABC News, Channel 7, New York City did a great job sending you off. But I am jealous of the Mopar, the old green, white, and black. Really cool send off with a nice car and a Tommy gun, right? But before we do that, I want to get to some of these quotes because they're really important. So Jimmy Kennedy, former 7-5 guy. Great to see you, Joe.
Great detective.
Yes, very good. And a great SRO, which is an interesting thing. And we might talk about SROs, and something Jimmy said to me on the phone about 2 years ago was one of the most fascinating things I ever heard coming from a homicide detective who transitioned to an SRO in his retirement years. A gentleman by the name of Rob. The debriefing of prisoners and talking to them and giving them cigarettes and chips is what gets and leads and solves crimes. These examples, what's not taught today to young cops. I can't believe they don't debrief every prisoner. Now, I know the detectives in the 7-9 squad, when I was there, 7-7 squad before that, it was kind of a pain in the neck to debrief, and a lot of prisoners were coming up, but man, were they fruitful all the time. Joe, what do you think about debriefs, man?
Well, I really like this quote by Rob, and it reminds me of Detective Stevie Litwin, who I don't know if you know him. He retired as a first grader, out of the cold case squad. But I came on a job with Stevie, 1981. And Stevie, because of the goodness in his heart, he's just a very generous person. He's a really good, valuable human being. So you were lucky to get arrested by Stevie. Stevie, if they wanted cigarettes, you got them cigarettes. If you wanted a gum, you got them gum, mints, whatever it was. They all went down to Central Brooklyn with a belly full of pizza or a belly full of hamburgers, and then he would take care of them, and he treated them like human beings. And then next thing you know, these guys get out of jail. They see something on the street or they hear something. They're calling Stevie Litwin. He didn't do it because he was trying to cultivate sources, but that's out of the generosity of his heart. He developed all these sources. So that's so true. Talking to people, and not only talking to them, but respecting them. Even we run up against some of the meanest people that you're going to encounter on this planet. But even give them as much respect as you can, and you never know how it's going to pay it forward, and bring you good information.
Yeah. So for me, I work in tech since I retired. I've been data, information sharing, license plate readers, facial recognition. Joey, in fact, you and I, when we went out to dinner in DC, when you were on your Congress, we talked about that was when social media was just starting to come out, and
Yes.
all these new things and these new advancements and the harvesting and exploitation of social media to create leads and generation and stuff. And the one thing that I've always learned, and we've talked about it, and Pete and I have certainly talked about it, you can have all the technology in the world, going back from fingerprints back in the day to DNA to all of this new stuff with LPR and facial rec and all that stuff. Your ability to get someone to tell you something they're reluctant to tell you, whether they're a witness, a complainant, or a perpetrator, they don't want to tell the police something for some reason. Can you, as the detective, get them to talk to you? What do you guys think?
Oh, I agree, Tommy. I tell you, the one block at the ATF Academy that I used to go and literally talk to every class was the interviewing block. And I would tell them it's the most important thing you're going to learn down here. Because we had 3 weeks of SWAT training, 3 weeks of blowing shit up, explosives training. That's exciting. For them, an interview block was boring, especially for the folks that didn't come from law enforcement. So I would try to hammer that home. Some folks got it. Others didn't. Others came on the job wanting to go directly to a SWAT team or being undercover. But no, I mean, that's where I, buttered my bread, man, was in the box, in the interview room. And that's why I also sing praises of the proffer. Sitting there in a proffer room with an AUSA and a defense lawyer and just peeling back every layer of the onion. I mean, that's how you make good cases. So I don't get it why some folks don't embrace that. Some folks are just about the print card and the stat, and they just want to move on. And that's really a disservice.
Yeah, I would like to comment on that also. Interrogations are extremely important. And then to cultivate them to even make a video statement if you get them talking with the DA. But I always believe that, you treat people with respect, you give them an out. I mean, I can't tell you how many baby killers, I mean, not baby, but like 7-year-old, 6-year-old kids that got killed. The reason they got killed is because their mother was murdered by the boyfriend or the husband, and they had to kill the child because of the witness. But they confessed to it. They didn't wake up that morning planning on killing the mother, number one, or the child, number two. But things, got out of hand, and they lost control of themselves. So you have to give them an out to get it off their chest, tell them the truth. I'm not a monster. I'm not an animal. This is what happened. It was a dispute, and it got out of hand. So, and also, before you go into interrogation, especially a homicide interrogation, because that's really all I know is homicides, is you have to know the facts of the case. You have to know if the guy's bullshitting you or if he's giving you half a truth. So before you walk into that room, know as much as you can. I know you don't always know everything because you weren't there, but know as much as you can. This way you can determine if the guy's, steering you the wrong way or steering you the right way. It's very important.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll add is by the time I would get into the substance of what I really wanted to talk about, there's times I'd be talking to that person for an hour and a half, just building rapport. And I agree with everything you said, Joe. The other thing is you always got to leave the door open at the end of your interview. You may have to talk to that person again. So that's where the respect really comes in handy, is because if you build some degree of rapport, if you have to re-engage that person for another interview down the road, they'll talk to you. Where if you treat them like crap, they're going to close that door as soon as that interview is over. So yeah, you're entirely correct.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Rob here, I watch old school Brooklyn North detectives. I noticed he didn't say Brooklyn South, though. But Brooklyn North detectives sit and practically hold guys' hands while lighting their cigarette. I'm going to share a quick story. I remember going through CIC, criminal investigators course in the NYPD right after the merge, and the detectives who worked on the Eddie Byrne killing in the 103 precinct, they did all of this stuff that we're talking about right now with the 3 guys who killed Eddie Byrne. And they said, and I remember this like it was yesterday, they said they took a lot of shit from the guys in the precinct, the uniforms, saying, how could you why are you not beating the balls off of these guys? Why aren't you doing this? Why are you feeding them? Why are you giving them cigarettes? Why are you taking them to the bathroom? And they go, there's a means to the end. And that is to get a conviction. And that is to put this guys away for the longest they can. And the paroles are up right now and they're coming up, and it's a whole nother conversation for another day. But what was really important to me was I learned right then and there, and talking to those guys and from many other people, your job is not finished at the arrest. Your job is finished at the final appeal of the SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States. When all appeals are exhausted and all of that is done, that's when your job is done. And that's why you have to do these things when you're talking about these murders on regular civilians, baby cases, kids cases, and especially a law enforcement officer. So thanks, Rob, for that comment.
Very true. Very true. Everything.
Okay, so Joey, your career, you get promoted to detective, and you've had 10 promotions in your career: police officer, detective, sergeant detective squad, lieutenant, commander detective squad, captain, deputy inspector, inspector, deputy chief. Tell the audience what you told me yesterday.
The proudest rank that I ever achieved was when the day I made detective. And I'm getting emotional now. It was something I wanted to do, from listening to my brothers and all that stuff. So I stare at the shield. I'd lay in bed, I'd stare at the shield. I was so happy and so proud. And I still feel that way, The proudest day of my life professionally was the day that I got promoted to detective. I mean, that's really how I started out. It's what I wanted to do, listening to my brother Johnny and his buddies. So, and what's amazing is that I was able to accomplish it, with the help of my partners and everybody else, Timmy Burns and all the people that helped me in like 5 years. And like I said earlier, there were great cops that didn't get promoted for 8, 9 years, So, I was very fortunate and very thankful for the way things all worked out.
So this is also Dennis Schwab, the same partner that you were with that got stabbed, and you went to Valor Day, Medal Day, and got the Medal of Valor too, right?
Yeah, we both were. What happened was after Lieutenant Burns had sent that 49 in, 10 months later, we get a telephone message, both Dennis and I, that we were assigned from the 7-1 anti-crime to the 7-1 detective squad. So that was a major adjustment, and we stayed, in Crown Heights. We stayed in the 7-1, and now instead of running around the streets all day, now I had to fit in a couple of suits, and people are coming in, we're interviewing them, and it's a totally different job, But we learned a lot. I have to tell this one story. There was this first grade detective there in the 7-1, Richie Gordon, and he was a former Marine, and he was very straight up. So he would say, Joe, listen, before you submit a DD5, which is a report that we had to fill out when we do an interview, let me review it before you give it to the boss. This way, So I had to fill up about 3 garbage pails of rolled up DD5s at the Gordon, read them. And then finally she said, okay, you can put that one in Sergeant Foster's, Lyle Foster, in his mailbox and all that. So what he was doing, and he was doing it intentionally, he was preparing me to be the best detective, the best investigator that I could be, to document everything as succinctly and accurately as possible, as neatly as possible. And he knew that I was going to be going down to court. And now I have this pristine DD5 that has all my notes, everything that happened, chronologically ordered. His being a pain in the butt to me at that point in time made me a better investigator, made me a better testifier. And it's things like that I don't know if the young cops today, the young detectives today, are experiencing. So, but I had to tell that story because it meant a lot to my career.
Yeah. So I once saw 2 first-grade detectives. This is a true story. I'm not going to mention their names, but they get bounced from homicide and they end up back in the 7-7 squad. They have a problem with the boss. They're on they're a little scholarship back to the 7-7. They eventually make their way back. And they're sitting and they're typing up misdemeanor arrests in the squad. And you know how these guys were in homicide like a week before. And they were doing it perfect and they were doing everything right. And they were doing Miranda cards with reading the rights on misdemeanor cases. And they were just so adept and so in sync and programmed to do things so well. And I once said to them, and I heard them talk to another detective, and there's other detectives, and I've heard this repeated in the 7-9 with a couple of my guys in the 7-9 as well. They say you treat every case. And as a former commander, I really want to hear and Pete, your perspective as a catching detective. You treat every case as if it was the most important case in the world because they're all practice for the big one. And so just because it's a misdemeanor, domestic violence, maybe a felony assault, domestic violence, and which is, I think, is serious. However, do every case as tight as you possibly can because they're all practice for the big one.
There's a lot of truth in that. We're all creatures of habit. And if you form the right habits, no matter what those detectives are going to investigate, they were going to be that way because that's the way they were taught. And, it's important to be taught the right way and to have experienced detectives teach you. Like they don't even teach you that in CIC and in the homicide course and all that. You learn that out in the field, working in a busy squad. Typing is so important. Documentation is so important. Because you go to trial a year later. You remember what's happened to you in your life in the past year. So it's very important to document succinctly and precisely what you need to document.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I tell you, Joe, look, I had 2 people. One of them's on this chat. Scott Wagner was a housing detective, taught me those same very principles. And then there's a guy who's right now he's battling leukemia. Probably taught me more than anybody on this planet. John O'Malley, former Bronx homicide guy that then went to work for the Southern District of New York. There's another thing. Sometimes that little case turns into the big case. Or can get dragged into a racketeering case. So, you always want to bring your A game because you never know when that little insignificant arrest turns into something monstrous. Let's not forget how David Berkowitz got caught, right? I mean, not that it's a report, a parking summons, a little insignificant thing can sometimes turn into a big thing. So you're entirely correct, Joe.
And it's up to and that's what separates great detectives from regular detectives is go hunt for that summons. Go hunt for what do you call them now with the domestic violence? I forgot. Go read what this guy's about. Who's he calling? So much information that's out there that you can grasp onto that not everybody looks for.
So I'll tell you a quick story. I'm a sergeant in the 7-7 squad. Tony Vigiani, Brooklyn North Homicide. Shout out to him. First grader, one of the best.
Yes.
I've worked with a bunch of tremendous detectives, but Tony's definitely in the top list. And I remember him on a homicide case. I don't want to say a routine homicide. None of them are routine, just like car stops and just like domestic violence calls. None of them are routine. But I remember Tony was not the catching detective, but he was backing him up. And he was doing the canvas. He was talking to the crowd. And then he went and did the door knocking. He did the building canvas. And he was just grinding it and he was a first grader. And here's this guy. And I was a young sergeant at the time. And I'm looking at this going, this is the work. When they say you make your own luck, it's those calls. So when that call comes in a month later and that phone call comes in and the tip comes in and they go, oh, you got lucky. That person just happened to call. No, it's because of the detectives that went through painstakingly, made sure they knocked on every door and they tried to even gain entry into some of those apartments when they thought it was appropriate. Close the door. Talk to me. What do you know? What'd you see? And all those things. And all of the best detectives who, even though they were in their 20, 25, 30th year and they've reached the first grade levels, they were still grinding it out. Those
That's
were the
right.
best.
That's right. I'll just tell you one story along those lines. When I was a young detective in the 7-1, you know, people don't want to answer the door. They don't want to be seen talking to the police. So what I devised, this is before computers, this is before emails, text, is to print out a flyer. You know, on such and such date, John Jones was shot and robbed. You know, on the corner of Nostrand and Crown, whatever. And then please call if you have any information, and we put our phone number down, and then we would slip these flyers underneath people's doors, and you know, it generated a few leads because they were able to call from the safety of their home, and nobody knows they're calling. So and like nowadays, you know, I don't know what they're doing now with emails and text messages and all that, but they should be utilizing some type of practice because people don't want to talk to you if the bad guys are seeing them. You know, they like their life, they like their families.
Yeah. So John McCarry, Finest Unfiltered founder, and him and Eric Tim on the Finest Unfiltered Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 8:05. I learned the most from the bosses that were considered ball breakers. Joe, I know you. I don't think you were ever a ball breaker. You're a nice guy and you're extremely a knowledgeable guy, but how did you get through to those younger guys who were making the mistakes and you needed to fix those instead of just marking up their paper and ripping up their 5s and the red pen on the 61s and all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I always tried to lead by example, and you know, I worked hard, and I knew what I was doing, and I would communicate with them. I would talk to them. I say, listen, you know, don't do it this way. Try this, you know, and I would try to reason with them and talk to them, and usually that worked out. You know, I never gave a command discipline. So you know, I'm not saying I'm not saying I'm proud of it, but you know, that's the way I was. You know, so. Yeah.
So I feel like, Rob, I'm back with Kevin Corsi in Brooklyn North Homicide. So damn professional and is dealing with all people. Documentation makes you legit in a courtroom. So we're going to get back to Joe, but I have to tell a Kevin Corsi story. So we're in the 7-9 squad. We're running around on a caper. It's a homicide. He was in Brooklyn North Homicide at the time. And over at the Marcy houses, they patrol, crime calls in, says, hey, one of the guys you're looking for on this caper, we just pulled them over. We got a car stop. Kevin and Richie Bergen run out together, and they run out into the street, and they got the guy up against the car, and Kevin gets there because, you know, from the 7-9 down to Marcy is about a 15-block run straight down. And someone notices Kevin Corsi doesn't have his gun in his holster because he put his gun away because he was doing the interviews. And he turns, and someone says to him, Kevin, get the fuck out of here. I'm sorry. Get out of here. Get back. You don't have your gun with you. And he turns around. He goes like this. I got these.
And he did have them. Yeah.
His mitts were huge.
Yeah,
it is huge. So anyway,
quick.
Hey, Joe, we didn't talk about this last caper on patrol. Then we're going to get into some more of the investigative stuff. Tell us about this caper, September 89, part of your guns and talking about how guns lead to bigger things.
Yeah. Well, this was actually, I had made sergeant, and I did my first 6 months in the 8-8, and then I did the next 6 months in the 7-3 precinct. And this was election day. So usually election day, you know, you're going around, your only duty is to make sure that the ballots get counted and delivered to the Board of Elections. So I leave I'm being driven by police officer Sorrentino there, Tom Sorrentino, and we're leaving one of the locations, and we hear coming over the radio a car chase where there was just a drive-by shooting in the 8-1 precinct, and the guy's coming right at us into the 7-3. So we jump in the car, we drive like 2 blocks, and the guy races right by us. So we make the turn, we pull him over. We didn't pull him over, you know. He sideswiped somebody, and he had to stop. And we approached him, you know, guns out, all that. And Sorrentino was right in front of me, and I couldn't really see exactly what was going on. But the guy had pulled the machine gun that he had. He had 3 guns in the car, and he had a machine gun with a muffler, a silencer. And Sorrentino fired 1 shot, and it missed the driver of the car, and it dug right into the steering column. So then he steps on the gas. He almost runs over our feet. And then Ron Schindel, who's also in the picture there, and his driver chased the guy a couple more blocks, and they pulled him over and they apprehended him. So you never know when things are going to happen. You can be walking into the courthouse. You could be walking to your car or coming out of the station house, and you never know when something's going to happen. So that was a really great collar. We got a couple of awards for it, but you just got to be careful. Every time you put that uniform on, you're a magnet to trouble and also a magnet to helping people.
Yeah, we got a couple of comments from Jack Stern here. They want to know what your thoughts on the state of the current NYPD right now. We're going to do Joe's career. We're not going to get too much into that right now. We'll probably do a wrap up on the end, but I want to acknowledge the comments are coming in. They'd love to hear your perspective. I think there's a lot of respect coming out. Eric Dim also, Joe must be appalled by the sight of the managers filling in rank of chief. I think we have a nationwide problem with the leadership in the country. I don't know why it is. I mean, I have some suspicions about what's going on. I asked Gary McCarthy when he was on in one of the earlier episodes, if we were all learning from the people we wanted to emulate, where did that stop? Like, when did it stop when the younger people coming up just stopped trying to be like the one before them? I think that's a more appropriate question for you, Joe. Do you have any thoughts around where's did that break? Like, when did it stop saying, I want to be like Joe Herbert? I want to be like Pete Frisella in the ATF, a deputy director. I want to be this guy.
I think it's a combination of a few things. Number one, we were able to do in our generation. I mean, let's face it, our generation, and I'm talking about multiple years of cops coming on the job, like in the 80s and 90s. Our generation knocked the socks off of crime in New York City. My first year in the 7.5 squad, we had 129 homicides. We led the city. I think now they probably have 25 homicides. They're still leading the city. It's still a very violent place. But what I'm getting at is crime has come down so much that, and then on top of that, so you have less crime. I want to say something, but I don't want it to come out that it's racial. But I have to say it because it's true. I drive around Brooklyn to this day, and I see a lot of gentrification. I'm serious. Crime is down. I see a lot of gentrification. I see people, on the corner of Fulton and Franklin, when Tommy, you went 7-9, there were crack houses, double homicides every other Thursday. Now there's a cappuccino joint on the corner. Yeah. So I think that's part of it, and also the political element of the city that's out there. They are definitely in favor of people getting out of jail as opposed to people going into jail. I'm not in favor of putting people in jail unless they deserve to be in jail. You have to get violent people off the streets because they're violent. That's why you do it. But they have it in their heads that anybody in jail is a bad thing. Yeah. And that's not really the case, Yeah. So I think it's a combination of a lot of factors.
Yeah. Okay, so you make sergeant, you go back to the 7.5 squad, and you become a hostage negotiator. And I hear you on your first job, you get a big caper.
Yeah. So prior to that, the Zodiac in 1990 had started shooting people for no reason except their birthdays initially, and then just for no reason except that they could. And he was communicating with what separated him. What made him more important than any other case was that he was communicating with the media and generating a lot of headlines and so forth. So I was fortunate enough to be in the 7.5 squad on August 3rd, 1994. And I get a phone call from DCPI, and they tell me that they just received a letter that the New York Post had just received a letter from somebody alleging that he's the Zodiac killer that was terrorizing the city in the early 90s, 90, 91, 92. So they faxed me a copy of the letter. And what this guy does, and in fact, it was the same Zodiac, in that letter that he sends on that day, he documents 5 new instances of violence that he perpetrated. And he's taunting the police, Zodiac 9, NYPD 0. And then he does like a maritime flag code. When they broke the code, it basically says, I am the Zodiac, I am in control, get ready, there will be more. So as a result of that, I get assigned to the Zodiac task force. It was the second task force that they had. They had one earlier that they broke up at about a year, I guess it was.
That
So
was the
now-
senior citizen squad, right?
What's that, Tom?
The senior citizen squad or something like that first
Well,
did it.
the first instance that they knew they had a serial killer, because a note was found at the scene, was Joseph Procci. He was an 80-year-old plus senior citizen who they thought got robbed. He didn't get robbed. He just got shot because the Zodiac wanted to shoot him. So that's how it started. And then it's a real complex case and all that. A lot of hard work went into it over the years. So I get on the second task force, and it was really, I mean, I was working with the greatest detectives. They from Brooklyn South, from Queens, from Brooklyn North, Louis Savarese, who I know you know, Tommy. We worked very hard. It was unbelievable. Actually, I learned so much from the Brooklyn South guys. Artie Semioli, he was a ballistic expert. He knew everything about bullets. Gilbert Powell, these guys were incredible. So anyway, after
So
the
go back
second
to
task,
CETA. Go back to CETA. Yeah.
yeah. So after the second task force was disbanded because we didn't solve it, I took advantage of the hostage negotiation team. I went to the class, and it was a 2-week course. One week in the academy, 1 week at the range, and I became a negotiator. So as it turned out, my first hostage negotiation was on June 18th, 1996. I was in the Brooklyn North Homicide as a sergeant at that time. I had recently been transferred there. I was reading a couple old homicide folders, and I get a call. There's a hostage situation at 2730 Pickett Avenue. Guy shot his sister, and he shot it out with 15 cops. He's holed up in an apartment, and he's got the sister's boyfriend held hostage in the back bedroom. So I respond to the scene, and like I said, it's my first negotiation. They bulk me up with the ceramic vest and the emergency service, putting the Kevlar helmet on me, and they erect a bulletproof glass with a bulletproof protector with glass at the top that I could see through, and a loudspeaker. So I start talking to him. They told me his name was Eddie, and I'm trying to communicate with him from in front of the apartment building. And he didn't want to talk to me. He came to the window a couple of times. He pointed what I believed to be a rifle at the time at me a couple of times, but he didn't pull the trigger. So with that, they were emptying out the building, and they finally get the building empty, except for Eddie Sater and the hostage. And now we climb through a window to work our way up to the 3rd floor in front of his front door of the apartment. The closer you get to speaking to somebody, the better it is, you know. So now I'm at the door, and it's like 100. It's literally 100 degrees out, sweating. I have everything on, and I'm sweating, and everybody's sweating in the hallway. ESU is behind me with the heavy weapons. Bob Kincaid was one of my mentors. Kenny Bowen from the Brooklyn South Homicide was one of my coaches there, and finally we're able to talk him out. So he tells me, "All right, I'm ready to surrender," so we deferred to emergency service. I said, "What should I tell him to do? How do we want him to do this?" So they tell me tell him to put his hands up, get in front of the door, unlock the door, don't open it, turn around in front of the door, put his hands up. We'll enter the apartment and handcuff him. So with that, prior to that, he had put 3 buckets full of guns and gun parts and bullets out the kitchen window to ESU, who lifted it up to the roof. So now we got all the guns out of the apartment. He's going to turn his back, open the door, unlock the door, and we're just about to move forward. And he says, "I got rid of all my guns. What should I do with my bombs?" So I said, "Yeah." I said, "Eddie, you got bombs in there?" He says, "Yeah, I got bombs in there." So now we got to confer with the bomb squad, and so they decided. ESU said, "Let's get him, the hostage, out of the apartment, and then we'll send the bomb squad in to see what we're dealing with the bombs." So that's what we did. We opened the door. He's standing there with his back to us, with his hands up, his fingers spread apart, and they handcuff him. They hand him to me, and so I take him to the radio car that was waiting outside, and I take him to the 7-5 precinct, and I hand him over to Detective Danny Powers, who I worked with extensively in the 7-5 squad previously. And Danny caught the case of the sister being shot. So now I had to go back to the scene, and my car was there, and I had to see what the bomb squad was doing. And I'm back at the scene. In the meantime, Danny's interrogating this guy, Eddie Sater, and he writes a confession out to shooting his sister. And in the confession, he writes a strange symbol, like an upside down cross with the letter 777 at the three lower tips. So Danny recognized something was up, and he says, I got to get Herbert. I got to find Herbert, because he knew I was on the Zodiac task force, and I had studied those letters for years. So he brings them out. He brings the confession out to me, and I'm standing in front of the apartment building where we just spoke him out, and I'm reading the confession. And it was 2 pages. The first page, I'm reading it, and I recognized the handwriting right away. It was the Zodiac. And then I turn the page, and there's the upside down 7. I don't know, I can't see, but in a lot of his letters, he would do the upside down cross.
Yeah, so for the audience, this is one of the notes he sent to the Post, I think, in 1990. But this is an example of the handwriting. This is not the confession that Joe's talking about.
Right. So I recognize the handwriting was the bottom line. So now I said to myself, okay, Joey, you're not a handwriting expert. You know it's him in your heart. You have to prove that it's him, to the district attorney and to the bosses and everybody. So I map out a strategy. We're heading back to the 7-5. And I know the evidence that we have. We had one fingerprint from a letter in the Central Park shooting. We had ballistics from various guns that he used, but they weren't traditional lands and grooves ballistics, because he used zip guns. But even the zip guns leave markings and scrapings and all that stuff on the bullets, but they could be identified. We had DNA from one of the letters, and the handwriting, and then so what we wanted was a confession. So the first thing I do is I have Tommy Marr, who was one of the tremendous detectives in the 7-5 squad with me. I had him major case fingerprint Eddie Sater, and Tommy knew the game. He fingerprinted as much as his fingers that he could, and he runs those prints into the latent print lab, and Detective Ronald Longes was the latent print guy that was our specialist that we were working with the most. Fortunately, he was working that day. So I said, Tommy, run these to Ronnie Longes and let's see what he says. And so while he's doing that, I'm having him vouch all the zip guns and the pipes and the ballistics that we recovered from the shooting with the cops and his sister, and we run them to the ballistics lab. But Tommy calls me about an hour later, and he says, it's a match. Ronnie Longes says it's a match, the fingerprint. So now I know we got him, we got the handwriting, we got the fingerprints. Eventually, the ballistics all matched. The handwriting analysis, once they was done by professionals, they said it was the same handwriting. And then we were able to, after like an 8-hour interrogation, he finally gave it up to me, Louis Savarese and Tommy Marr. And he went through every case, told us how he encountered the victims, how he shot them, why he shot them. And, it was a great case. It was an important case because it had garnered tremendous headlines in the early 90s with the NYPD. He was the biggest serial killer in New York since Son of Sam, So that's how that one went down.
Yeah, so 2 things. So what I'm hearing from you, I hear ballistic analysis, right? But it's not just ballistics, because you're talking about a zip gun. It's actually the certified examiners are actually tool mark examiners.
Yes.
So they're not just ballistics, they're tool marks. So any metal on metal, metal on wood, any 2 things that collide into each other leave impressions and marks, and all sorts of really cool, interesting, unique markings that they are. And there's only about, I believe, 400 in the United States and 800 in the world that are at the highest level certification. So those people are incredibly valuable. You got your fingerprint, your latent guys, you got your crime scene guys, you got your handwriting and document analysis people. What is the mark of a great detective? Not knowing all the answers, but knowing where to get the answers.
Exactly right. And it's funny with the let me just get this straight. So there was one we knew, before we solved it, before the hostage job, we knew we had our best evidence was the fingerprint, and we believed it was the right thumbprint from the letter that he left on the Central Park bench that they shot Larry Parham. So I'm devising how can we so at the time the databases were kind of like shortchanged. They didn't have the big database that we have today, and the only crimes that they entered into the databases were really violent crimes. So I felt we were cutting ourselves short with the chance of solving it with the database, because maybe it's a misdemeanor arrest, maybe it's a lesser felony arrest that he got. So what we decided to do was go a mile. He had two comfort zones, one in Highland Park in 7-5, and on the streets of 7-5, and I think it's the 102. And then right between them, we started there, and we went a mile east, a mile west, a mile north, and a mile south. And every address within that 4 square mile area, we identified people who had criminal records from running the addresses. And then what we did was request from the ballistics lab, from the Leighton lab, if they could manually check those 4,500 sets of fingerprints with the print that was lifted from Central Park. And sure enough, 1,500 of those fingerprints cards that were submitted were sealed. Now in New York State, fingerprints and arrest photos get sealed if the DA dismisses charges, or you found not guilty at trial, and there's probably a couple of other reasons. So the Zodiac, prior to the shootout, when we grabbed him, had one arrest for a zip gun. And when the zip gun went before the lab, the ballistics lab, they couldn't put it together. They couldn't figure out how to operate it. So it was deemed inoperable. It, in fact, was one of the guns that he shot one of the victims with. But, you got to be careful when you're messing with guns, So anyway, those charges were dismissed. He was in the 4,500, but his fingerprint was sealed. So we lost that opportunity. But at the same time, Louis Savarese, who knows guns, just like Artie Semioli from Brooklyn South knew guns, he says to himself, let me see who in this area that we just ran gets magazines, these gun magazines, Fortune. I don't know the names of them, but Louis knows the names because he knows all about guns. And Heriberto said his name was one. He was ordering these magazines on weapons.
Wait a second. I want to hear about this. How do you get magazine subscriptions for firearms?
Well, certain magazines. It's not. There's certain magazines that like Soldier of Fortune,
right,
and there's a couple others. So he sent subpoenas to.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
And then he got for our zip code, like for the zip codes that we were dealing with.
Yeah.
And then he was able to determine who was in the.
Oh, that's brilliant. Love it.
So detectives, we're thinking we're trying to identify without it coming to us. We're trying to identify ourselves. So it worked out great. It was a great call. It was a great arrest. A lot of publicity. It opened up a lot of doors to me in my career later on in life. One thing.
No, finish up on your career. It opened up a lot of doors for you. I was in Brooklyn North Narcotics when this went down, and I went to the 7-7 squad about a couple months later. But yeah, and like for us, we were hearing this, and we were hearing about this guy Joe Herbert, and he did this, and he recognized the handwriting, and Danny Powers, who I became friends with many years later. Isn't he like a cattle farmer or like a dairy farmer or something like that?
I know he was a fisherman. I don't know what he's doing now. I know he was.
Yeah. And so anyway, so I can understand. So finish your career and then talk about how your proudest moment of what you were able to do for Eddie Seda.
Yeah, well, the arrest because of the notoriety that it got, it really, like I was known in Brooklyn. But now, as a result of this case, I was known throughout the city, like you're just talking about. So
I would argue nationally. But
maybe, yeah. So and then later on in life, which I can get into a little bit later on, it opened up a lot of doors for me. But one thing I didn't realize was that I was an excellent matchmaker, also. Besides being a very active street cop and investigator, because Eddie ended up going to prison He's sentenced for like 300 and something years. And he fell in love with a Latin king who had breast enhancements done. And, you're looking at the New York Magazine article there. They did a big article on him. I think he sued the state because his Latin king lover was Cynthia China Blast was her name. And he got transferred to a different prison eventually, and I think they sued because of a forcible divorce or something along those lines. So,
Well, Joe, use the proper pronoun. Cynthia, although a biological male, should go as a female. It's a her. So let's just be politically
I don't
correct
really
here.
know. I don't really know, like if he or she is a full transsexual or whatever, and it doesn't. I don't care. No, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah.
It's confusing. It confuses me.
Yeah. So listen, we've got, I mean, the numbers are huge. We got tons of listeners. Joe, you're obviously an attraction. It's coming in great. We are going to talk later about the DC takeover because we want to hear about your congressional appointment and the time you spent in DC. So not only are you a professional who could comment on this, but you also lived there for a couple of years and you weighed in as a national security advisor for Congress and Representative Peter King. And then we want to talk about that takeover. And then, so that's where Pete and you are going to get really down and dirty with your federal weed and seed cases, your RICOs, your CCEs and stuff like that. But before we do that, is there anything else you want to talk about in your career prior to 9/11? Because, and even after 9/11 a little bit, because I want to bring up a little bit of something where you were one of about 15 people in a book that was written. So anything else you want to talk about before we talk about the book?
The only other thing that I wanted to touch on, but I could do it probably later on, was when I was in the 7-5, I was a 7-1 cop. So we didn't really have any housing developments in the 7-1. So when I went to the 7-5, there's like 6 large housing developments. And a lot of violence emanated from these housing developments. And what I learned, and I learned it from the detectives that have been working there for years, and from the community, from talking to them, was that a subculture kind of evolves in these housing developments, where there's a hierarchy within the each housing development. And unfortunately, it mostly evolves around drug sales, robberies, and so forth. So, maybe 1% of the population of these housing developments are terrorizing the rest of the 99% of the people who are hardworking, good tax-paying people just trying to raise their families. But they terrorize the community. And even more insidious, in my view, was they targeted the younger children of the hardworking people that, and then they bring them into the negative culture.
Yep.
So it's like a real challenge. So the best way that I figured out how to solve that was when I was in a 7-5 squad, I became aware from FBI agents that I was working with that the 7-5 was designated as a weed and seed site. And what the weed and seed site meant, I don't think the program's active anymore. But what the weed and seed did at that time was they would provide law enforcement weed money, where you weed out the drug dealers and the robbers and all that stuff, and then they would follow it up with seed money, where they would, like in one case, they built like a computer class for one of the developments. They improved the basketball courts. They improved the schoolyards for the kids and all that. So we took advantage of that, and it was incredible. When you do these RICO cases, what you're doing is you're prosecuting the conspiracy that these guys are all involved with. They're all doing their individual acts of violence, their drug deals, and all that stuff to sustain this conspiracy of this hierarchy within the developments of what they're doing, and it's all illegal. So we would put together a RICO. Sometimes it took 6 months, a year. It does take time, but on a day of the takedown, we locked up 20, 30 shooters. We recovered 20, 30 guns, and people. Like I would walk into the housing development, like a week later or whatever like that, and they didn't want to talk to you in front of other people that are still there, but I would walk by them and they would say, keep up the good work, keep up the good work. Like, because, they want to live their lives as safely, and they want their families to grow up as safely as possible. So I wanted to get that in because it's very important to do these type of cases.
Yep.
We work for the community needs us, and it's our job and our responsibility to do everything that we can within our power to make that as safe as possible for them. They're involved.
Okay, so let's talk more about weed and seed, because I think when we talk about DC, we talk about the vacuum that's going to occur when all the Fed resources are out, and then how you thought and Pete thought dismantling the existing crews that are in DC. I think that's a perfect segue. So you can get more into it. So thanks for bringing that up. So I'm going to finish up your pre 9/11 and a little bit of post 9/11 stuff with a book. And for those of you who are watching in the NYPD ranks who were active or retired, or if you ever knew anything about the New York City Police Department, there used to be a magazine called Police Beat, and it was written published by Cynthia Brown out of Boston. And I want to say this from the political perspective. I'm not going to go deep into the politics, but I will bet you anything she's a stone cold Democrat liberal out of Boston. I will also tell you she's a massive supporter of police. And she published a magazine called Police Beat. And she wrote a book called Bravehearts on 15 heroes of the NYPD in 2010 when it was published. Joe was one of those subjects in there. So I hate the term liberals this, liberals that. Progressives are a problem. Socialists are a problem. My brother, I think I'm a liberal at some point in some of the things that I look at. So I want to make that very clear that here's a woman who is probably in today's very fiery political side would not be considered. She's a wonderful person, and she's a massive supporter of cops. And she wrote this book published in 2010. It's braveheartsbook.com. Joe Herbert, the super sleuth, was one of them. And for any of the people listening, active or retired, there's a lot of massive heroes on this list. I'd love to spend time on each one of them. There's a married couple, Pete Tukovich and Anne Margaret Lyons. She's an original transit. We got Barry Galfano, an original transit, former good friend of mine. The last time I saw him was at the book signing, which you and I spent time with, Joe. And just all these heroes, Rich Miller, Mike Morris, Sam Punchal, Pete Tukovich, Anne Margaret Lyons, Bobby Holm, John Bushing, Bobby Johnson, Steve Bonanno. I know Rob Lukash. You know Steve well. Kai Wong, Barry Galfano probably as well. Tony Diaz, Stephanie Eichhorn, Joey Herbert, and Alvin Roundtree. Get this book. Right here, my autographed copy. So,
Tommy, I just want to follow up on one thing. It is a really good book, and Cynthia Brown. I don't really know about her politics, but she's one of the finest human beings I have ever met in my life, and she is so pro cop. She loves the NYPD, but she loves cops throughout the country. And I got that Police Beat magazine frequently, and everything was pro cop. It was really, really good.
So when she wrote this book and it came out, Chuck Ramsey, former commissioner of police department of Philadelphia, former Chicago, former DC chief, Jeffrey Kuhn from American Military University, Dean Esserman, the former general counsel for the New York City Transit Police, went on to become chief of the New Haven, Connecticut Police Department. They all said that they put this book into their academy. This picture on the right-hand side, students in Indiana Law Enforcement Academy, which is a lot of agencies sending there to a statewide academy, all made them read this book. Why? Some of their stories are phenomenal. It happens all over the country and everywhere. But this is about commitment and the true brotherhood and the heroic things that these cops have done in their careers. And these 15 people in the NYPD that she profiled, there could have been 100. There could have been thousands across the country. Joe, I'm glad she picked you. She could not have picked a better Detective Bureau representative, in my opinion. However, this is required reading across the country. I don't even know if it's required reading in the New York City Police Department anymore.
I know it used to be in the academy, but in the NYPD academy, I don't know if they still distribute it. I don't know.
Yeah. And so there's Joe at the book signing on November 9th, 2010. And then with all the crew that was in the book with Cynthia Brown next to Joe. And then to prove I was there, myself, my wife, Joe, and his wife, Barbara. And then, Joe, I'm sorry the other picture here cut you off, half off. If I had known they were taking pictures, I would have scooched in a little bit.
Hey, you can cut half of me off anytime, man. Look, makes me look better. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were in New York City for the book signing. You got choked up before talking about this stuff. That night, I think we all lost it. Like, we all lost it. Listening to those stories, tremendous. So kudos to you for brave hearts and getting in that book. And for those of you who are listening in right now, go find it on Amazon or braveheartsbook.com. Pick it up. It is a great read.
Certainly is. Thank you, Tom.
All right. So let's do DC. So I'm going to turn it over to you guys. Joe, tell everyone about your congressional appointments. I think you did 3 years, 2 stints, 1 2 years, 1 year, something like that. But tell everybody what you did in DC, and then you and Pete are going to take over from here because of the federal programs and the stuff that should go on.
So what happens is starting in 2009 until about 2013, for 3 of those 4 years, I worked and lived in Washington, D.C. 2009, I worked a year in the National Counter-Terrorism Center as an analyst, focusing on the New York threat. And it was an unbelievable highlight of my career. I can't really talk too much about it because of the classification levels and all that stuff. But it was born out of the 9/11 Commission, the NCTC, and it was to ensure cooperation and communication between all federal investigative agencies. Like in my NYPD mindset, it kind of reminds me of CompStat. It forces everybody to work together, and it's been very successful. And they're still doing it. And keep it up, people. Keep it up, ladies and gentlemen. So then I came back and lived back home for a year, and then in 2000, I believe it was.
I think Joe stalled a little bit. He'll be back in a second. Here we go. Little technical difficulties here. He'll be right back.
You have it now?
Yeah, we got it.
There we go.
Okay. So I don't know where we left off, but I did 1 year in NCTC, and then a year back in New York, and then I did 2 years working for the Homeland Security Committee as a advisor to Chairman Peter King. And that was an incredible assignment also. What was going on there was that we had like a team of about 5 investigators, and we would brief the chairman and other members of Congress about current threats and all that. Keep him in touch with what's going on, behind the scenes. And while I was there, I saw how hard the chairman worked, number one, and how hard his staff worked in the Homeland Security Committee to make sure that the bills like the Zodiac bill was financed. And now it's the World Trade Center. A lot of politics are involved there, and a lot of hard work goes to make sure that those funds are available for people. I mean, I know a lot of people who died from 9/11 cancer, and it's unbelievable. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's terrible. So I saw how hard they worked in Congress for that, and I also saw how hard they worked. All the protective initiatives that the NYPD has been doing since 9/11. All the heavy weapons in front of the iconic structures and all that, and so that all costs money, and a lot of that is federal programs, federal money. and they worked to ensure that the NYPD, as well as LAPD and all the other major cities who have threats to terrorism, are financed to provide this protective equipment, cars, cell phones, radios, vehicles, boats, helicopters, you name it. And then the NYPD in New York, we put it to really good use. So it was really an interesting experience, and I saw the inner workings, if you will, of how the money is distributed, by Congress. So
Yeah.
it was worthwhile.
All right, so let's get into that. Like, so now you've been there, you're working on that. It's great to hear that this is how they're finding out to finance. But some stuff happens, so we always bring our guests. We love to focus on their career, but also let's talk about some of the things that are happening right now, and this is top of mind on everybody. And then yesterday's newspaper came out: 12 straight days without a murder. I believe they had 16 straight days without a murder in March of this year. And then prior to that, they have not had a stretch like that since 2020, COVID, the summer of love. And then before that, they've been, DC has always been notoriously high for murder cases. Pete and I both have sons that work in DC. Pete's son is a federal agent. My son's a local cop there. So we care about what goes on here as well as we do in New York City with all our little leaguers and our nieces and nephews and friends and kids that are sergeants, detectives, and cops now. But so what's your take on what's going on? And then Pete, let's hear from Joe, and then Pete, jump in.
Sure.
So I saw the headline, and I'll tell you, the first thing that came to my mind was, and this is just Joe Herbert talking, was you're probably better off doing historical recos, getting the FBI heavily involved. There's a lot of unsolved homicides in Washington, D.C. I know. I used to follow, when I lived there, I followed the papers and the local crime, and I still do somewhat. There's a cause for a lot of recos there, a lot of conspiracies, drugs, robbery crews, drug crews. The reason I felt that they should do that as opposed to bringing in the National Guard, and I have nothing against the National Guard, I just thought that the community might react violently. But as it turns out, from what I see on the news and the papers, the community seems to be happy. Not the leadership of the community, but the community seems to be happy with the results. They feel safer and all that. So at the very least, what I think they should do is initiate RICO investigations based on past violent crime. And because what's going to happen, gentlemen, is that eventually they're going to back off, whether it be this administration or the next administration. You're not going to have the pressure that you have now. And then what happens all the time is once the police back off, the bad guys are going to start doing what they do again. So my idea is create some RICO investigations. They're there. They're sitting there. They're waiting to happen. Historical RICOs. And start putting these guys away federally for a long time. It's very, very important. Otherwise, I think you're just going to go back to the old habits, So that was.
So let me interrupt here. So this is Jack Maple, who started CompStat with Bratton and under Giuliani, and the 7 pillars of his strategy towards reducing crime: focus on warrants, juvenile offenders, community policing. 4, investigations and detectives. That's what you're talking about. Then Peter going to talk about in a minute. Targeting predatory criminals, same thing. Tactical enforcement, integrity and accountability. And then also, because we talked earlier, the famous scribble on a napkin in Elaine's, Jack Maple's 4 tenets for reducing crime. That's not the strategies. This is the tenets: accurate and timely intelligence, rapid deployment, effective tactics. And this is why number 4 is highlighted, Joe. Relentless follow-up and assessment is what you're saying is all of these feds and the National Guard are going to leave, and then it's back to the same old story. Pete, you talked about that in Soundview houses in the Bronx. I am done. I raised the issues. I'm going to let you guys talk about what DC really needs.
Yeah, well, look, what we did in Soundview, we had a very willing U.S. Attorney's Office. We went after some low-hanging fruit. We arrested them for firearms violations. We proffered them, and then we rolled into going after the heavier targets. And look, the way you roll people in the federal system is they're looking at time, and they want to bargain away that time. They want to sign into cooperation agreements, so they'll minimize their sentences. Some of these people are looking at for example, a 3-time felon getting caught with a spent shell in their pocket can do 15 years federally, because it's a component of ammunition. And in Southern District, they were more than happy to charge those sorts of folks. So yeah, Soundview was great. We, in the end, Sex Money Murder had 51 defendants. It was 3 waves. I was involved in the first 2 waves, where I was actually the lead NYPD detective on it. And then I went over to ATF, and I helped a little bit on the 3rd wave. But 51 defendants, and what happened was NYPD saturated that area after the arrests were made. So crime wasn't allowed to fill that vacuum, right? Like what we normally would see. So now with DC, what troubles me, and look, I want to touch on something else too. My wife and I, for the first time in years, went to DC and walked around. We put in about 5 miles on Sunday. And I will tell you, the mood was unlike anything I've seen ever. People were happy. That's people of color. That was white people, Hispanic people. People felt safe. People were fist bumping the National Guard folks. So I do think in some ways this has been a success for now. I also get a little perplexed when people complain about National Guard being involved in things. In New York, we had National Guard personnel assigned to the New York Crime Gun Center. Now, they weren't out there, doing patrol work or anything like that, but they assisted in law enforcement operations. Granted, it was usually in an intelligence capacity, not going out there doing hands-on work. But I mean, in New York City, they had the guard in the subway stations. So I mean, that's one thing. I am concerned when they go away that crime will filter back out. But the other problem is, look, my daughter was a federal agent in the Washington, D.C. area. She's now with a different agency that doesn't focus on violent crime. My son is with the U.S. Marshals Task Force. My son-in-law, who's married to my daughter, is an ATF agent. And all of them have always complained about the difficulty in having cases taken federally, because the U.S. Attorney's Office passed on a lot of, they call it no paper. The same thing went with state cases. So perhaps with Judge Jeanine Pirro, who seems to be talking the good talk, maybe they'll get a little bit more aggressive now, So we'll see. But I agree with Joe. You start putting the really bad people away, things will get better to some degree. The other challenge is that a lot of the criminals in D.C. are juveniles. The feds can't touch juveniles.
Yes.
I mean, my entire career, I've seen one juvenile offender arrested. It was actually by SDNY. It was an Albanian kid involved in a home invasion, pretty brutal one. It's the only, he was 15 years old. That is the only juvenile I've ever seen arrested federally. Because look, the federal system doesn't have juvenile detention facilities. So, I mean, there's a lot of challenges in DC that we wouldn't have seen in New York, again, because, well, back then, in those days, we had very aggressive prosecutors in SDNY and in EDNY. The other thing about DC that's historically been a problem is their homicide rate has been very high. Their homicide clearance rate historically has been very low. So they got a lot of challenges that we didn't face in New York. And it's going to be interesting to see how they get through this.
Yep. So Joe, before you jump in, let's do a video. Pete sent me a video today that's pretty funny, or sad, or both.
By the way, my son was the arresting officer on this particular matter.
Let's see if I can get this up in the.
Trump will hold a cabinet meeting.
Hold on.
What he is calling the
Sorry, guys. It's
a
a
country, Washington D.C.
Our nation's capital seeing over 1,000 arrests since his federal takeover and nearly 2 weeks stretch without a homicide.
So the streets have been stripped of over 100 illegal guns, 6 known gang members among those arrested.
Chicago is now top of mind as.
Before we get into it, I want to point out when they start talking to the perpetrator that Pete's son made the arrest for the carjacking. That's the thing you got to pay attention to.
Trump considers sending a National Guard troops to other cities to crack down on this crime, on all the crime nationwide.
And the U.S. Marshals taking our own Alexis McAdams out onto the streets of D.C. for an exclusive look at the ongoing.
You blurred him out there. He's on the right.
Yep. She joins us from Washington with a Fox News exclusive. Alexis.
Good morning. Yeah, we had the chance to go all around Washington, D.C. We're still wearing the same outfits we were when we started this ride along, you guys, because they went pretty much all night and all throughout the morning trying to get as many people as they could off the streets here of Washington, D.C. We had a one-on-one with the director of the U.S. Marshal Service, who tells me his job here in the capital city is far from over. Is it surprising to you that all this crime is happening just steps away from our nation's capital?
Yeah, it was very surprising. And that's the reason why President Trump has declared this public safety emergency. You know, this is the capital of a nation, right? Of the best nation in the world, the strongest nation in the world, the freest nation in the world. Yet we can't walk the streets without getting mugged, raped, and robbed. You know, and that should not be that way.
So according to the feds, nearly 100 people were arrested just last night. They had teams out all over the place from federal, state, and local partners. Our cameras were rolling as we spent hours out there in different parts of the city. We were in high crime areas right outside, pretty much just a mile or so from the White House. It was interesting to see. You didn't have to go far to go to those neighborhoods. They served warrants for suspects wanted for a long list of violent crimes like what? Robbery, carjacking, and assault. So one guy, we were there when he was arrested, wanted in connection with an armed carjacking out in Maryland near Baltimore. He told investigators, "Why are you taking me in if they're just going to hold me for 3 days and release me?"
The judge is literally going to say we're going to put him on a 3-day hold. Then once the 3-day hold is up, and Ronnie never shows up. I done been over DC jail 6 times for the same warrant. They never show up. DC jail has to release me. They release me. It's the same thing every time. The same thing. Every time.
So there you go. I mean, that's the best.
That's been the problem, Tommy. Like I was saying, you know, it's look, where there's no consequences, evil people do bad things, you know, and that's what you have in DC. You have people who aren't afraid of justice coming their way, and they marginalize the victim, which is terrible. I mean, we always held the victim in high esteem. But I will say this too. Gaddy, the U.S. Marshal Director, was Miami police officer before he went to the Marshal Service. Good man. I knew him when I was down in Miami myself. He's a cop's cop. So the Marshal Service is very lucky to have him.
So guys, dismantle the do these investigations, the weed and seeds, and like talk about that. Talk about your cases, Joe, and the 7-5, and how these things were different, and what's similar and what's kicking around.
Yeah, well, you know, I did the RICOs in the housing development, utilizing the weed and seed money, and like I said, the benefits were incredible. And I just want to mention one thing: Pete's absolutely right about the juveniles. It was always a problem, and even today, I bet it would be more of a problem because they're intentionally using the younger guys to do the shootings and to go out and do the muscle work. But at that time, we collaborated with the U.S. Attorney. They collaborated with the Brooklyn DA's office, and they charged by state charges a lot of these juveniles as juvenile offenders. But you can't go federally with them. So, but you know, there are ways to work around, but you need good communication and cooperation. So after the housing development RICOs, we had we responded to a homicide on the conduit in 7-5, and it looked like it was at a gas station, and the gas station attendant was shot dead, and his pockets were pulled out like it was a robbery. The register was open. There was a couple dollars left in the register. It was an apparent robbery, but I had 2 detectives that really put a lot of time and effort into it. Teddy Braun from the 7-5 and Tony Bizzata from the Brooklyn North Homicide Squad. So they were working the case hard, and they went to the wake of the DOA. It was an Indian individual. He's a Sikh. So they're sitting there in the wake, and they're talking to everybody and all that. And somebody comes up to him and says, "Hey, listen, I think I know who killed him. I think I know why." And so they cultivated that individual as a witness. And what was going on was the owner. I don't know if you guys remember City Gas. It was a gas chain in the city. There was some in the Bronx, Pete, and in Brooklyn and Queens, everywhere. And they had like 51 gas stations in the city. And each gas station had, a dozen pumps or whatever. So what he would do the owner, his name was Dinza Singh, what he would do, he would rig the pumps to cheat the gas consumers of 10%. So if you ordered $20 worth of gas, you were getting 18. Or if you were filling it up, you weren't really getting a full tank, but your gauge looked like it was full. You were getting 10% less. And that was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And he had other mechanisms of how he was stealing money. But he was very violent. He would kill people, shoot people, torture people that impacted his business negatively. So our DOA had come to this country in the last year because his brother, who worked up in the Bronx, one of the Bronx City gas stations, was missing. And it turned out that he was getting information from other people that Dinza Singh killed his brother, and this guy came to investigate that. So as it ended up, he killed about 6 people, mostly in Queens, and shot other people, and he terrorized people. So I realized what was going on, and I said, if we charge this guy, this guy's a bad guy. This guy's, he's doing RICO worth crimes. I said, if we charge this guy with the 7.5 case only, there's a good chance. I mean, he had a lot of money. He was going to hire the best attorneys. There's a good chance that he was going to be able to beat the case. It would be a circumstantial case, no witnesses. So I went down to the U.S. Attorney's Office, who I had familiarized myself with, working the housing development RICOs, and I sold it to them, and they said, yeah, we'll bite. They signed a couple of FBI agents, and they ended up doing a RICO case on it, and it was the best thing that happened to that series of crimes. It was the worst thing that happened to the owner, Dinza Singh, because he's still in jail. I think he's doing, over 100 years in jail for these crimes. But what I'm getting at is it highlights the need for RICO investigations, and this is going to apply to Washington, D.C. too. And the New York State Court of Appeals makes it very difficult to prosecute cases, even individually, never mind in multiples. So the feds are given a lot of authorities by Congress. They have different laws, and it's much more favorable to prosecutions than what the state laws are, especially in New York. So there's ample room for RICO investigations throughout the country. And if anybody from the U.S. Attorney's Office is watching this or hear about it, I would recommend rejuvenating the Weed and Seed program. It's magic for the community, and that's what we're all about, is the community. You weed out the cancer, you weed out the drug dealers, you weed out the robbers, the violence, and you seed it with building whatever you can, whatever that community needs, And the community loved it. They loved it. We got awards from them. It worked out good. So there's real life utility to doing these RICO investigations, and I hope they take up on it, especially in Washington, D.C.
Yeah, and Joe, I'll add to that. There's other things that can be done too. There's continuing criminal enterprise cases against drug gangs involved in murders. There's also another statute that I didn't know about till I became a Fed. That actually, remember Kevin Gillespie, the street crimes police?
I know him very well. He was a housing cop in a 7.5 before he got killed. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, Kevin, when he was killed, if you remember, the Bronx District Attorney's Office didn't want to charge because they didn't want to go after the murder. They would charge him, but they made it clear we will not seek the death penalty. Southern District decided to take it, and they charged what's called the Hobbs Act,
yes.
Which I'm sure you're familiar with, Joe.
Yes.
And that's basically if you rob something that affects interstate commerce, you can be charged federally. That's the niche has to be interstate commerce. Taxi cabs pick people up at airports, right? That's what they tried to carjack, was a taxi cab. So they used that hook to take that case federally. And if you remember, when he knew he was going to get the death penalty federally, he committed suicide in prison.
Yes, I remember that. And you know what? That's why Congress gave these powers to the FBI and all that. For cases like that.
I wish more cops knew about those hooks, because when I was a younger cop, there were times where I probably could have had somebody charged with something federally where he couldn't get a charge in the Bronx, but I just didn't know any better.
Right. Same thing here. I didn't know about it until I got to the 7.5 and somebody explained we didn't see it to me, And then, so you're right.
Yeah, I was in. So when I got to cold case, so we talked about this when I did the interview with John and Eric on the Finest Unfiltered. We talked about this. I get to cold case, and John and Eric talk a lot about goals and quotas, and they insist that there's quotas on the job, and maybe there is, maybe there isn't. I don't know. I like to say their objectives, whatever. But in the cold case squad, we had. We expected 2 cases put down a year. And, I mean, some of the detectives were getting those on one RICO, and they would have a couple of different ones all around the city. And, it's kind of like, like those are going and they're working and you got federal partners. But so in March or April, there was one detective that was like, their feet up was on the desk by April. And I was like, hey, what are you doing? It's like, I got my 2 on that RICO down in New Bern, North Carolina. I was like, no, that was for the firm. That was for the firm. You're now doing God's work. So let's
get 2 more. Go get 2 more.
So the RICOs are great for clearances. They're great for taking really bad people off the streets for really long periods of time and dismantling crews for sure. However, there's also a need to just work those other cases that are not part of the RICOs.
Absolutely.
The sympathetic victim cases, Joe. Talk about some of the capers that you had that were near and dear to your heart and that still gnaw at you. Maybe you solved them, or maybe it was just, you solved it, but it really, really ate at you. Some of the state case on the sympathetic victims, the women, the strangulations, the very personal murders.
Yeah, I investigated. I counted it once, like a little over 800 murders in my career, and there's a lot of them that we solved, and a lot of them that we didn't solve. But if you don't mind, Tommy, I might just want to throw you a curveball on that question. So, getting back to the RICOs, I basically did narcotics ones, and then I did the city gas one.
Yep.
So I was planning on doing another one in the 7-5 just before 9/11, and then 9/11 happened, and I had to disregard it. So there were young girls in the Linden houses and the Boulevard houses, which was 2 housing developments very close to a prostitution strip on Pennsylvania Avenue in the 7-5. They had a couple of short stay hotels nearby and all that. So what was going on in these housing developments at that time, and it was right about 99, 2000, 2001, was that there was a crew of guys, pimps, that lived in those developments, and they were recruiting young girls that lived in the developments.
Yeah.
And, it started out dating them, taking them out for the movies or whatever. And next thing you know, they got them walking the strip on Pennsylvania Avenue. And it still bothers me today, that I never got a chance to do that RICO, because we had a conspiracy. The prostitution was the conspiracy, and we had violence to support it. They were shooting other people that were robbing the pimps and robbing Johns and all that stuff. So just to throw a curveball at your question, which is a great question, is that case haunts me because I never had the opportunity to do it. And I wonder how many lives I could have impacted of young girls in the Linden houses and the Boulevard houses who wouldn't have grown up, with that trauma. So, but a lot of murders. There was there's so many. There's so many that I don't even know where to begin. We didn't solve.
Yeah, I know the 800. It's not easy to recall. I was thinking the other day, I want to FOIA and get all the homicides from the 7-7 and the 7-9 from 95 to 2005. I want to get those 10 years of all my homicides so I can refresh my memory.
Yes. It's funny because I've been writing a book, and I'm not gonna. I don't have a title or nothing like that yet. But anyway, I've been going to various commands that I used to work in, and I used to know everybody. Now I don't know nobody. Nobody knows me, and I don't know them. And I feel like I'm a burden. Like I'm looking for old homicide folders because I want to refresh my memory and all that stuff. So it's all different. So if you can subpoena them or whatever you can, however you can get them. Good luck.
Well, Joe, if you show up in the squads, you got to show up bearing gifts. You know that, right?
No, I know, but you know what? they package a lot of the case folders and they ship them to storage now. You know, in the old days, I had the locker room with the back walls in the 7.5. It was all homicides. You know?
No, don't tell me that. Don't tell me
Yeah.
that. You can't do that. That is a major faux pas in basic detective school 101. Those cases need to be in the local squad because you never know when something's going to break and someone's going to talk. And I need to access that file now, today. There's somebody who used to lock up cases, Pete Friselli, and that is a no-no. You don't lock up cases. They're available to the squad.
Tommy, I used to read every old homicide and the different commands that I've just to learn A, about the homicide, and B, the different techniques, the different initiatives that were taken to try and solve them and all that. There's a lot of information in those folders. So I'm with you on that. They should be right in the back wall there. Even when the cold case when Maples came in, they started the cold case squad.
Yep.
There was a Lieutenant John Dove. I think he was
John Dove is a good friend of mine.
You may know him. So he came to the 7.5 once. And I had been hearing rumors that, people are resisting the cold case squads. And I had a back wall full of unsolved homicides. I said to Lieutenant Dove, I said, John, tell me which ones you want. If my guys are working it, that's something different. We're working.
Right.
But if they're just sitting there collecting dust, please go solve some of these. So that was that. Believe it or not, that was like an unnatural response. But it's all about justice. It's all about getting the bad guys off the street. So
yeah, yep. Pete, you got some experience with this?
With locking up cases? I don't lock up cases. I work for a lieutenant in the Bronx that locked up cases and sometimes did a little bit of cattle rustling from time to time. I know you know who I'm talking about. One of the reasons I left the NYPD to go to ATF was that nonsense. But yeah, I'm all about sharing intelligence, brother.
Yeah. So Joe, we're heading up on 2 hours. Thanks for coming on and doing this. I'm gonna go a little bit outside, and then I'm gonna punt over to Pete. So I don't normally do this, but John and Eric do it, and Rob and Ron do it. They ask the former NYPD guys 2 questions, and one of the questions is, and I already know the answer, so you don't have to answer it, but you can editorialize if you want. If you do it all over again, would you do it all over again if you had another chance to do it?
I wouldn't change one thing.
I wouldn't change one thing. That is the common answer a lot of people say. The second part of the question, though, is would you come on today and do it again today?
I would, although I know things are different. What bothers me is, we're civil servants. We're not making the most money and all that stuff. And then I see these politicians trying to impact negatively the pension of these young, they always sell out the unborn, make it from a 20-year pension to a 22-year pension and stuff like that. So even though you feel like nobody's really, supporting you and all that stuff, I love the job so much that I would do it again, even though the politicians and leadership is sending the wrong message oftentimes.
So Joe, you and me are the only 2 that have said yes so far. And I'm kind of on the fence. Oh, and that reminds me of another story I want to talk to you about. But Pete, go ahead. You got anything for Joe?
Yeah, I have a question, Joe. I mean, I wish we could cross paths during my actual career with the NYPD or even with ATF. But obviously, you have a tremendous amount of passion for the job. I mean, you got emotional about your detective promotion, which is awesome, I think. And reading the comments, I mean, obviously, people deeply respect you. It's hard to walk away from a career like that. You got to find something to keep you going. Me and Tommy talk about this stuff all the time. What keeps you going, Joe? I mean, other than writing your book, or is that right now your current main focus?
Well, the book is basically written, but the reason I wrote the book was to keep me busy, and because I felt that my career, was kind of like a glimpse of history in the NYPD from the 80s. Like the crack epidemic and all the violence associated with, and all the important cases. A lot of cops got shot. Yeah. A lot of police officers got shot throughout the city during those years, and a lot of them in Brooklyn South. A lot. Chef Herman was a 7-1 cop. When we changed in the locker room, my locker would bang up to his locker all the time. That's how And I got to know him very well. And Jeff, unfortunately, was killed in the line of duty on Hawthorne on Hawthorne Street. What was I going with? Oh, what to keep me busy? So,
what passion? What do you put your passion into now? That you're obviously a passionate man. Like what? Where's it going?
Now I follow I follow all the cases going on, in the country, in the city, in the world, even I'm always on my iPad, doing research and all that stuff. My wife, God bless her soul, used to say, "Will you put that iPad down?" But like that, I'm investigating. That's what I do. That's what I can do. So.
Great, thank you, Joe.
That's awesome, and you have a granddaughter now too. So, as a new grandfather, relatively new grandfather, I'm sure that keeps you busy as well.
Oh yeah, she's the best. She's the best. Yeah.
So I have a CompStat story, and I want you to tell it. And I tell this story all the time, but I said I wish you could see Joey Herbert tell it. Do you remember the CompStat where Narco was up, and they asked the narco lieutenant from the 7-5? His name was Joel. I'm not going to say his last name. And they asked him if what he was doing was legal. Do you remember his response? Yeah. So kind of set it up a little bit. I think that people would love to hear that. No names. I don't know if he's watching. I don't know if he's got a kid on a job or something. But, yeah.
Those CompStat days, Tommy. You know that game. Yeah.
Oh man! Well, but let me ask you a question: Did Anamone, Norris, McCarthy, eventually George Brown, Bill Ali, all of these guys, did they kick our ass? And when I say kick our ass, like appropriately, not inappropriately, not like but like just hold us accountable the way we should have been held accountable. Did you ever think it was grotesquely unfair?
No. In fact, I used to say to myself and people who would listen to me that you needed a guy like Anamone at that time because he was a no-nonsense guy. And, old-timers in any job, they don't want to change. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's set in their ways. And we had real crime problems on the street, and the old ways weren't really working. So, they had to bring in new ideas and, you got to force people to change, so that's why a lot of people left and all that stuff. And, but the city benefited from the change, so.
Yeah. So my chief of departments at CompStat were Anamone, Dunn, and Espo. And then my commissioner of operations or crime control strategies, depending on the time, were Norris and McCarthy. And then my chief of Ds were Ali and Brown. And like, I can honestly say I got handed some. I tell people I got the scars on my back to prove it with the whips and the beat downs, but I would 100% do it all over again, and I would expect them to hold us accountable the same exact way. And and then just so everyone knows, we used to go to breakfast after every CompStat. And then the squad commanders, if you remember. So the patrol commanders, the narco commanders, and the detective commanders used to go to breakfast in the 8-4 on Cadman Plaza.
Cadman Plaza, yeah.
And then we used to go to breakfast post-CompStat and debrief and shape up afterwards and, mother F everybody. And that wasn't fair and whatever. And I remember one lieutenant used to say, if I go to CompStat, I put a slip in for 4 hours. If they call me up, I put in for 8. If I get beat up, I put it in for 16. Right? And then remember the following Thursday, all the squad commanders, we would go to Teddy's in the 9-4.
Yes.
Those were good times, Joe.
They were good times. They were important days. It was important work being done, and an important time in history. And the city is still benefiting from all the work that we put into it.
Yeah. Yeah, so with that, guys, Pete, I'm going to rip it up to you. What I'm hearing from the two of you is DC and other big cities need to take a very proactive approach on federal cases. So go around the room, and then I'll do the house cleaning and wrap up on the show unless you guys got anything else.
Tommy, between Trigger Lock and the racketeering cases that they did in the Bronx, the Nasty Boys, the C&C Company, the Wild Cowboys, The Bryant Avenue boys. Crime, the homicide rate in the Bronx was roughly 600 a year prior to those things happening. Went down to around 200 a year. And it's because not everybody's a shooter. When you take the really violent people and you put them away for a long time, two things happen. One is they're not shooting, right? So number two is the other people that hung out with them realize, hey, if I get caught with my gun, I'm going to go away from federal time. I'm going to leave my gun home. So when they get in a beef, by the time they go home to get their gun and think they're going to go back and do something, half the time they've de-escalated in their head. And it's like, hey, it's not even worth it. So crime goes down. But again, where there's no consequences, bad people will do evil things. And that's where we're at right now in a lot of cities is you have these woke DAs, to include some who, look, Darcel Clark was a pretty good DA when she was a line assistant. Now she's declining cases left and right. It's something that has to stop because look, the people that are getting hurt, they're people of color. The crime, unfortunately, is happening in the neighborhoods where those folks live. They're not safe. So yeah, you might not be sending somebody to jail who should be in jail, but the end result is people getting hurt. So we just need to get back to what we did. We proved that it worked during the Bratton and Giuliani days and days that followed. The equation is there. Do the math and roll it into other cities. That's my opinion.
I'll tell you one story about this. So we took down one of the Ricos in one of the housing developments, and the name of the gang was the Crime Family. So we have one of the leaders in the back seat. We were taking him to where he thought we were going, Central Booking.
Yeah.
So the way it is in Brooklyn, downtown Brooklyn, Central Brooklyn's in the 8-4 precinct. So he thinks he's going to the 8-4. Now we're going over the Brooklyn Bridge. We're going to 26 Federal Plaza. And he says, "Where are you taking me, man? I told you you're going federally. What do you think? I'm bullshitting? You're not going to Brooklyn. You're going. You go, fuck that. You can't do that." And so these guys know the difference, because it's serious time. They get shipped to Colorado. They can't get visits from the family. No, they consider all this.
Yeah.
So it works.
Yeah, we crossed the 3rd Avenue Bridge heading down towards SDNY. I'm telling you, hardcore guys that were in and out of Rikers Island dozens of times, weeping, vomiting in the car. They do.
Yeah.
They know the deal, these guys.
That's so good. All right. Well, listen, Joe, you're writing a book. Pete did write a book and it's been published, but Joe Herbert. So everyone who's listening, look out for Joe Herbert's book coming up hopefully sooner than later. But Joe will bring Joe back on when it gets close and getting ready for a launch. And we'll invite everyone to the book signing. It's going to be in the Rockaways, or we're going to go big shot New York City, Joe.
Oh, I don't know yet. I tell you, it's easy to solve serial killings and chase terrorists than it is to get a book published these days. So.
All right, you hear that, everybody? It's easy to lock up terror. Joe, we didn't even talk about counterterrorism stuff. If you want to come back, we'd always have you back. We could do that. The ones that you're cleared to talk about, we would love to do that. We'll see what's going on.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So Pete, The Deadly Path, PeterJForcelli.com, also found on Amazon, Google, Simon & Schuster, Barnes & Noble. And then for us, we're at The Finest Unfiltered on YouTube, X at Ten-Four Tavern. Pete and I are prominent on LinkedIn. You'll find us there mostly. I'm starting to dip into X more now as a result of the Ten-Four Tavern podcast, but LinkedIn was my primary platform of choice. We're also on Instagram, Ten-Four Tavern, and Facebook, Ten-Four Tavern. Let's do this. Let me go here. Tomorrow, the Executive Perspective, Rob Lukash and Ron Layson are talking about Mondami's NYPD abolishing misdemeanor arrests. Why bother? Just go for the felonies. No problem. Quality of life, no big deal. Misdemeanors, no big deal. Felonies only. So Rob will be and Ron will be talking about that at 5:05 Eastern Wednesday. And then tomorrow morning at 8:05 a.m. in the morning, The Finest Unfiltered, Eric and John and Marlon will be on talking about, I'm not even sure, I'm sorry I didn't get that, but they will be there bright and early, 8:05, 4:05 for Eric out in Alaska. So with that, any final thoughts, anything to wrap up? And then we're going to go to our out, and then Joe and Pete, stay in the studio, and we'll debrief and wrap up the show. Great show. Really appreciate it, Joe. I love you very much. Care about you. We were always great friends. We know each other a long time now. I think you're one of the best of the best. Really appreciate you coming on here and sharing the stories. I think the guests and the viewers and the rookie cops and the young cops and the young bosses will all benefit from hearing your stories for sure. Pete.
Yeah, Joe, like I said, man, your passion surely shows through. And just the way people speak of you, amazing. Clearly, you were a great leader. We need more folks like Joe Herbert running police departments across the country, because that's not what's happening right now. Not everywhere. So honor to meet you. I wish we would have met in person. But yeah, pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you both, Tommy and Pete, very much. I really enjoyed speaking to you guys. I love the job. I love the NYPD, and I love New York City, man. And we got to keep it as safe as we possibly can. So thank you very much.
All right. So with that, guys, we're out. Have a good bye, everybody. Be safe.